Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this is an amendment to account for DCF spending on the Justina Pelletier case. Before I start, I would like to recognize, if it's okay with you, Mr. Speaker, Jennifer Pelletier, who is Justina's sister. She's up in the front row of the balcony. She came up tonight for a situation with her sister. So I want to thank her for being here tonight. This is one of those issues that I know a lot of you folks are kind of torn about. And I just want to go back over how I got involved in this case from the beginning and ask you folks to consider voting for this amendment tonight. I would like you to presume one thing, though, before I get started, and that is to presume that Lou and Linda Pelletier never neglected their daughter. Because when I first heard about this case, when I first heard about the fact that a child had been taken away from her parents and had been in the custody of the state for over a year, I said, there's got to be something that I'm missing. There has to be something else out there for the Department of Children and Families and then for a judge to take that child away. So as you listen, I would ask you to do that one thing and then make your decision. The one thing is to presume that these folks are innocent of any neglect of their child. What we have here, folks, is basically the Department of Children and Family interfering with constitutionally protected parental rights to make medical decisions on behalf of their children. Now, I want each of you to put yourself in the situation that the Pelletiers were put in. They followed the advice of their doctors. They brought their child by ambulance in February of 2013 to the Boston Children's Hospital. 3 days after arriving at the hospital, Lou Pelletier did not like the direction of the medical advice that he was getting. And he decided that he wanted to go back to Tufts Medical Center. And as he was sitting in the hospital, he felt something really unusual going on. He looked around the room and he saw security guards descending upon the office that he was sitting in. Picture that. You have a child, you disagree with a medical decision, and all of a sudden, security guards take you out of the room and tell you you cannot see your child. You know, I know that you folks know I can get a little excitable. Well, I think each and every one of us would have a difficult time dealing with that. And I don't mind telling you, the Pelletiers have had a very difficult time dealing with that. So what happened next is absolutely incredible. They took the child away and they limited visits to see this child. Not only did they do that, but when they see this child, now there are 2 state troopers there and 2 social workers there. I mean, this is the United States of America. These are parents who make a medical decision on behalf of their child, and the child is taken away, and when they visit her, there are 2 state troopers, 2 social workers. Now, I want to remind you, this is an agency, the Department of Children and Family, who cannot account for 134 children. Tragically, in the last month, we have heard about deaths within the Department of Children and Families. Is it possible that DCF made a mistake? We certainly know that they are capable of making mistakes. Everyone knows, I don't have to tell you what's going on within the agency. So as this case was developing and I got involved in it about 2.5 months ago, I never said a word about the judge. Because there's a judicial process that's followed. DCF followed some kind of process, gave some information to a judge, but I said, I'm not going to say anything about that judge because, quite frankly, I didn't know the facts. I didn't know the facts. Well, then the judge's ruling came out. This judge gave no findings of facts and no rulings until after a year that this young girl, was in custody. Now, just go back to February again of 2013. You're Lou and Linda Pelletier, you come to Massachusetts, they take your kid away from you, and oh, by the way, you open your mouth, we're going to put you in jail. We're going to put you in jail. Picture that. That's what happened. So Lou Pelletier kept his mouth shut. He kept his mouth shut. And he watched his child go from someone who was skating around to someone who is in a wheelchair. And so he made a decision. And that decision was, I have to speak up for my daughter or she's going to die. So he broke the gag order. And he spoke up for his daughter. Lou Pelletier is a man who has made a decision that he was prepared to go to jail to protect his daughter, as many of you would do. And I believe in the bottom of my heart that we have a responsibility to act. Now, I understand the arguments that people have made. But this judge, when he ruled, it was no longer about whether or not Lou Pelletier neglected his daughter. It now became about the fact that he used profanity in front of his daughter. Well, how many of us, if that was the standard that we had to live by as to whether or not we kept our child, how many of us could say that they could meet that standard? So the judge decided that the standard would be changed. And I just want to read one thing from his ruling, which I found absolutely incredible. Visits between Justina and her parents were postponed and rescheduled because media stations were broadcasting outside DCF office at the time of the visit. This is yet another example. This is a quote from a judge. This is just another example of the parents either directly or indirectly impeding progress in this case. I mean, that's incredible. So the standard that this judge has now brought to bear on the Pelletiers is, you swear in front of your kid, you got no right to have that child. And if the media should show up when you go visit that child, well, we're not going to let you have him back then. I mean, the standard that is in this ruling, and I urge each and every one of you to read this ruling and tell me what evidence there is of any neglect. There is none. On April the 2nd, the representative from Bill Ricker and I had an opportunity to meet with the Secretary of Health and Human Services. And I want to tell you that, in my opinion, the Secretary of Human Health and Services has begun to take a very active role and is truly, truly committed, in my opinion, to reuniting this family in Connecticut. But Health and Human Services is a very big organization. And anyone who's in charge of a very big organization can't possibly know every fact and every event and everything that takes place. And when we met with the Secretary, it was clear to me that he wanted to help, but I don't think he was adequately served by some of the people who work in DCF. I refer to it as the faceless bureaucracy that took Justina away from her parents. I specifically asked the question, and this goes back to that presumption of innocence. I specifically asked the question, Mr. Secretary, without going into detail, is there any evidence, was there any evidence in February of 2013 that Lou and Linda Pelletier in any way neglected their child other than making a medical decision that DCF disagreed with? And the answer to that question was no. On March the 17th, Justina's Pelletier's attorney, and Lou Pelletier and Linda Pelletier's attorney agreed on a plan to reunite the family back in Connecticut. DCF objected. Now, I'm not an attorney, and I know there are plenty of attorneys out here, but my understanding of courts is to bring parties together. So this judge decided that he was going to agree with DCF and not agree with Justina's attorney, who is vested with the responsibility appointed by this judge to look out for her best interest. She and the Pelletier's attorney agreed on a course of action. I want to know who at the Department of Children and Family was in the room who made the decision, no, we're not going to do this. Think about that. Your kid is ripped away from you, and you don't even know who the person is who's making that decision. This judge took what the Department of Children and Family said, and they said, we're not going to give this child back. And the reason is articulated in this judge's ruling. And finally, I asked the question, what is it that the Pelletiers have to do to get back their child? And this is where it became crystal clear to me that the Secretary was 100% committed to try to find that resolution. And I think over the last several weeks, he's been doing, with all the things that are on his plate, an admirable job trying to accomplish that. I'm going to go back again to the presumption of innocence. Mr. Pelletier, Lou Pelletier and Linda and Jessica Pelletier came to the State House sometime prior to March the 17th. And we talked to many of my colleagues about this issue, and one of the issues kept coming back to, you know, there's something missing here. There's something missing. And I had the opportunity to sit about 10 feet away from Lou Pelletier, and I had him tell the story about some of the things I just told you about, you know, how the security guards came in and they took the child away. But the thing that really struck me the most was sitting in the front row was his daughter Jessica. His daughter Jessica also has mitochondrial disease. In her late teens, ran into a similar problem. Got very sick. Got very sick. And guess what Lou Pelletier had to do then? He had to fight for his daughter then. He had to fight for his daughter then. And when I saw the smile come across the face of his daughter, I, for one, decided there is no way that this father and this mother neglected Justina Pelletier. Presumption of innocence. Losing your child for 15 months because a faceless bureaucracy that we know is in shambles says you can't have her back. Last week, the governor of the Commonwealth ran into Reverend Mahoney, who is an advocate for the Pelletier family. And the governor said that he wants to see Justina reunited in Connecticut with her family. Last Friday, after that encounter, the secretary wrote a letter to the editor. And I'm going to just read the first paragraph. Justina Pelletier should return to her home, state of Connecticut, to receive the service and support she needs close to her family, friends, and community. We strongly believe that this outcome is in Justina's best interest and have laid the groundwork to make that happen. Now, if the Pelletiers were such awful people and had neglected their child, why would the governor, and I know why the secretary, because he understands what's in the best interest, but they would not be moving to move this child back to the family. But yet that's what they're doing. That's what they want to see happen. But, folks, we can't allow this to go on and on and on, because we know what happens in DCF. Things just get brushed aside. Just get brushed aside. It is time, in my opinion, for DCF to show some humility and for the governor to step forward. The governor is now making the argument that it's the court's fault. It's the court's fault. Did anyone see the news reports over the weekend about what happened in Grafton? Anyone see that? The Grafton Police Department faxed a letter to DCF. We know the result. We know the results. It's the Grafton Police Department's fault. Governor Patrick could solve this situation tomorrow. As I indicated earlier, courts are about bringing people together. And the governor ought to recognize that he has the authority and the power to bring people together. We need DCF, the Pelletier's attorneys, and we need Justina's attorneys to agree to send this child back to her family. Now, what does my amendment do? What my amendment does is very straightforward. It is time to hold the Department of Children and Families accountable. We hear the fact that they don't have enough money to operate. We see what's going on. How much money has been spent to find the 134 children that are missing? How much? We have no idea. How much money has been spent on the Pelletier situation since February of 2013? Well, some people estimate $500,000, $1 million. 134 kids missing? Are we spending $134 million to find them? So what this amendment does, it says what we want DCF to do is to give us a full and total accounting of all of the monies that has been spent. Second, what we're asking DCF to do is to stop spending money on the Pelletier case. Stop spending it. And third, what this amendment does, it says, while you're preparing that report, and I'll read it directly from the amendment, Justina Pelletier is to be remanded back to the custody of her family to receive proper medical and emotional care. So, in February of 2013, DCF went in, took away this child because they didn't like the fact that Tufts Medical Center was who they wanted to bring him to. Well, the judge has now ordered Tufts Medical Center to take care of this child. In 2013, this judge put a gag order in place. That's now removed. In 2013, they filed a contempt motion against Lou Pelletier. That's been removed. We have this ruling from this judge, which now sets a new standard in Massachusetts for when DCF can bring it and take a child away. The question I ask is, who really is best suited to take care of Justina Pelletier? There are 4 daughters in that family. One of them, we know, had the same disease. We also know that Justina's health, all you have to do is look at the video, has deteriorated under her care. If DCF was doing such a good job, why is Justina in the condition that she is today? Because they're not doing a good job. So it is time for us to act. It is time for us to recognize that we have an opportunity to help a child and a family. And I would urge each and every one of you folks to please put yourself in the Pelletier's position. Presume that they never neglected, because there isn't any evidence to suggest otherwise. And please support this amendment. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Since the rules do not permit the House to meet beyond the hour of 9 p.m., the Chair will now place before the House the question